This is a 2006 Volkswagen Jetta TDI, and it's got a bad wheel bearing, and I'm going to show you what that sounds like, and this is the worst one I've ever heard. Okay, I'm going to show you what it's like with that really bad wheel bearing. So I'm just going to take it up to 100 kilometers an hour, and I'll show you what I mean. You hear it right away though. So you're starting to hear that bearing. Watch when I swerve to the left and to the right. Left, right. Hear how the sound goes away? The right rear wheel bearing is done. Okay, here's that right rear wheel bearing, or wheel. I'm moving the tire in and out. There's a fair bit of play in that. And then there's this. Doesn't sound very good, does it? Here's that bearing again. Sounds pretty nasty, doesn't it? Okay, so what you want to do is you got to take this little dust cover off here, and I usually take a flat driver and a hammer and I just pound on that a little bit and you work it around. You can't hold the camera and do that, but I'll show you what it looks like once it's off. Okay, so I got that dust cap off, and then there's this 12-point head here that you got to take off with a 12-point Torx, and it is a, let's see if I can get it on camera, 18. I got it off the tool truck. I don't remember what it cost, but anyway, it fits in there like that. You don't need it, but it helps. Okay, so what I like to do is I like to take a big drift and stick it in there like that, and then I'll grab a hammer and then I'll crack on it. You give her a couple of those and it loosens up the threads enough that you can back it off. I'll show you that in just a second. Okay, so I got a extension bar on my crack bar, and then I stuck my M18 in there, and now it should come loose when I crank on it, and I've got a stand under it just to hold it center as it twists it. That way you're not putting any tension on the tool that could potentially break it. And then you just push down on it and you can see it's turning there. There we go. And then now you can carry on removing your bearing. Sometimes the bearing doesn't want to come off. It's supposed to slide off nicely after you get that bolt out. But sometimes you have to tell it with another tool. So I've got a 3-jaw puller here, and we're gonna zap that sucker off. And there it is. I got most of the bearing off, but some of it stayed there. I just wanted to show you that the cause of the crazy loud growling sound you heard when we were driving it, and its material on the bearing started to come apart. I'm trying to get the light right. It's supposed to look nice and smooth like that, and we've got all of that there, and I think they call it burnelling or spalling. I can't remember the correct terminology for it, but anyway, that's why the bearing's being replaced. Okay, so what I like to do for my customers, here, I'm going to get the light down here, is I like to take the bearing apart, the new one, because they usually put really crappy grease in there, and I like to take that off of there. You usually have to pry it apart with the flathead screwdriver. This one I did. And then I take a grease needle, and then I'll apply grease in there, full synthetic AMSOIL grease. And I've done this on my own car, and I'm well over 250,000 kilometers on the last set of rear wheel bearings I did, just by putting this grease in there. And this grease is a lot better than the stuff that they sell you with the bearing. I think probably because of planned obsolescence. Okay, there, the grease packing is done. I got synthetic grease in there now, so I just snap this thing back together. You just slide that back into there, and you push it in, and done. Now we'll slide it onto the car. Okay, I just wanted to show you something else here on the spindle. You can see that little bit of black junk that's right there, with my fingers on. You can, if you run your finger along it, you can feel that it's not smooth, and it actually feels like it's got added material. And I'm just going to clean that off with some emery cloth before we slide this bearing on, because I noticed the new bearing does not want to slide on very nicely. In fact, I had to pound the old race off with a hammer, so that'll be why it doesn't want to slide on nicely. So we're going to clean that off, and I'll show you. Okay, so I cleaned that spindle off with some emery cloth, and you can see how clean that is now. Now that new bearing will slide on there just easy. And that only took about 5 seconds with some really fine sandpaper called emery cloth. Here's the new bearing going on. See how nicely that slid on? That's how easy it should be. And then I'll just clean off that grease there with the rag, and we'll put the bolt back in that holds it together. We'll torque it down, and then we'll reassemble. Okay, we got the bearing on, and now we're going to torque it up to 130 foot-pounds, and then she's good to go. And you're supposed to torque. You're supposed to use a torque wrench opposed to using a impact, because they say that using an impact will actually damage the bearing. So when you're doing bearings, you should actually be doing them by hand and tightening them down by hand and use a proper torque spec. Okay, so now you just got to reinstall your dust cover. You put that on there like that, and then you get a hammer and you just kind of tap it on. Difficult to do with one hand while holding a camera. And that's it. Then you put your brake back together and away you go. Okay, I didn't show you guys how to take the brake caliper off or the rotor off or anything like that. I presume that you probably already know how to do that. But I did want to show you this. Whoever the last guy was that worked on this thinks like me, because he put anti-seize on these bolts to make it so that it came apart easy for me. And these are the caliper bolts. And I'm so glad when I see stuff like that, because it means other people are thinking like I do, that somebody's going to have to take this apart again some point, and this just makes it a lot easier and you don't have to fight with the rust. So whoever you are out there, thank you for using the anti-seize. And before I forget, I just wanted to show you the bit. It's a 12-point bit for the brake caliper, and it's an M14. Before I forget to tell you what size it was. You're going to need that to get the brakes off. There is no not having that tool. You do need it. What the bearing's supposed to sound like when it's new, you're going to hear some brake noise with the pad just barely contacting the rotor, and that's normal. Notice the lack of growl? That's what it's supposed to sound like. Okay, so this is what it's supposed to sound like when your wheel bearings are good. You can actually hear the engine for a change. Take it up to 100 kilometers an hour, and yep, no bearing noise like before. Call that a success. Although I feel another vibration now, but it's related to, I think that right rear tire is out of balance and the right rear shock is not functioning correctly anymore. I did see that it was leaking, and I will inform the customer. And that concludes our repair for this video. Hit like and subscribe. Thanks for watching.